Today's episode of the More You Know podcast is brought to you by CrowdQuestion, a brand new social communication platform focused on connecting crowds to bring everyone closer to their community, as well as enhancing any occasion. Rather than being a social media platform focused on content and advertising, they're focused on communication and connection. Learn more about the platform and download the app free at crowdquestion.com.
I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
Today's
More
You
No
podcast.
Today I want to read a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Howard Cutler on ethical discipline shared in their book The Art of Happiness. The discussion begins by relating to training the mind for happiness, and the Dalai Lama points out, "I think that ethical behavior is another feature of the kind of inner discipline that leads to a happier existence. One could call this ethical discipline. Great spiritual leaders like the Buddha advise us to perform wholesome actions and avoid indulging in unwholesome actions. Whether our action is wholesome or unwholesome depends on whether that action or deed arises from a disciplined or undisciplined state of mind. It is felt that a disciplined mind leads to happiness, and an undisciplined mind leads to suffering. And in fact it is said that bringing about discipline within one's mind is the essence of the Buddha's teaching. When I speak of discipline, I'm referring to self-discipline, not discipline that's externally imposed on you by someone else. Also, I'm referring to discipline that's applied in order to overcome your negative qualities. A criminal gang may need discipline to perform a successful robbery, but that discipline is useless." Howard then interjects, stating, "You describe the negative emotions and behaviors as being unwholesome, and the positive behaviors as wholesome. Further, you've said that an untrained or undisciplined mind generally results in negative or unwholesome behaviors, so we have to learn and train ourselves to increase our positive behaviors. But the thing that bothers me is that your very definition of negative or unwholesome behaviors is those behaviors which lead to suffering, and you define a wholesome behavior as one that leads to happiness. You also start with the basic premise that all beings naturally want to avoid suffering and gain happiness. That desire is innate. It doesn't have to be learned. The question then is, if it's natural for us to want to avoid suffering, why aren't we spontaneously and naturally more and more repulsed by the negative or unwholesome behaviors as we grow older? And if it is natural to want to gain happiness, why aren't we spontaneously and naturally more and more drawn to wholesome behaviors, and thus becoming happier as our life progresses? I mean, if these wholesome behaviors naturally lead to happiness and we want happiness, shouldn't that occur as a natural process? Why should we need so much education, training, and discipline for that process to occur?" The Dalai Lama then replied, "Even in conventional terms, in our everyday life, we consider education as a very important factor for ensuring a successful and happy life, and knowledge does not come by naturally. We have to train. We have to go through a kind of systematic training program and so forth, and we consider this conventional education and training to be quite hard. Otherwise, why would students look forward so much to vacations? Still, we know that this type of education is quite vital for ensuring a happy and successful life. In the same way, doing wholesome deeds may not come naturally, but we have to consciously train towards it. This is so, particularly in modern society, because there is a tendency to accept that the question of wholesome deeds and unwholesome deeds, what to do and what is not to be done, is something that is considered to be within the pure view of religion. Traditionally, it has been considered the responsibility of religion to prescribe what behaviors are wholesome and what are not. However, in today's society, religion has lost its prestige and influence to some degree, and at the same time, no alternative, such as secular ethics, has come up to replace it. So there seems to be less attention paid to the need to lead a wholesome way of life. It is because of this that I think we need to make some special effort and consciously work towards gaining that kind of knowledge. Although I personally believe that our human nature is fundamentally gentle and compassionate, I feel it is not enough that this is our underlying nature. We must also develop an appreciation and awareness of that fact. And changing how we perceive ourselves, through learning and understanding, can have a very real impact on how we interact with others, and how we conduct our daily lives. Howard then countered with, "Still, you use the analogy of conventional academic education and training. That is one thing, but if you're talking about certain behaviors that you call wholesome or positive, and other behaviors leading to suffering, why does it take so much learning to identify which behaviors are which, and so much training to implement the positive behaviors and eliminate the negative? For instance, you claim that anger and hatred are clearly negative emotions, and ultimately lead to suffering. But why does one have to be educated about the harmful effects of anger and hatred in order to eliminate them? Since anger immediately causes an uncomfortable emotional state in oneself, and it is certainly easy to feel that discomfort directly, why doesn't one just naturally and spontaneously avoid it in the future?" The Dalai Lama then said, "When you talk of knowledge leading to freedom or resolution of a problem, you have to understand that there are many different levels. So it is clear that the more sophisticated the level of our knowledge is, the more effective we will be in dealing with the natural world. You also need the ability to judge the long-term and short-term consequences of your behaviors and weigh the two. The more sophisticated your level of education and knowledge about what leads to happiness and what causes suffering, the more effective you will be in achieving happiness. So, it is because of this that I think education and knowledge are crucial. One problem with our current society is that we have an attitude towards education as if it is there to simply make you more clever, make you more ingenious. Sometimes it even seems as if those who are not highly educated, those who are less sophisticated in terms of educational training, are more innocent and more honest. Even though our society does not emphasize this, the more important use of knowledge and education is to help us understand the importance of engaging in more wholesome actions and bringing about discipline within our minds. The proper utilization of our intelligence and knowledge is to effect changes from within to develop a good heart. In this conversation, the Dalai Lama clearly explains how ethical discipline is a guideline for happiness. And if you don't live with ethical discipline in your life, you're likely to live with suffering and struggle with happiness. Because of this, you must strive to live with ethical discipline, and understand by doing so your life will be better. It will be filled with happiness, joy, and fulfillment that will spread and make an impact in this world, and will assist you with crafting a life of significance.
I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
A
More
U
No
podcast.